Hey guys, what's up? This is Diego here at Cinemageddon Reviews. So, The Matrix Resurrection comes out on December 22nd, which is right around the corner. I'm really excited about it, and because I'm so excited about it, I'd like to revisit the original three films, mainly from a nostalgia standpoint, but also partially from an objective point of view. Also, since Resurrections is coming out on the 22nd, I'm basically cramming all of the original three Matrix reviews into one video. I don't usually like doing this, but I just eventually just ran out of time. My schedule's just really busy lately, and I feel like this is the best way to just talk about the films overall, how I feel about them, and what I expect from The Matrix Resurrections, sort of the things I'm excited about, etc., etc. Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's just dive right into the reviews, starting with that classic sci-fi film from 1999. The Matrix was undoubtedly an achievement in cinema, not just because of the technical aspects of the film. Obviously, the CGI, the action scenes, that famous bullet time stunt that was parodied and copied to death time and time again for years and years, that was all really great stuff. The original Matrix film is still today one of my favorite films of all time, top 5 easily, and the reason for that is, as a sci-fi film, it's very daring in the concepts it presented. It asks the question, is reality truly real? And just how much do we actually know about our world? It has so many hard-hitting metaphorical messages about unlocking your true potential and letting yourself be free inside and out, and it's all stuff that, especially as a teenager, resonated with me very deeply. I can definitely say The Matrix is one of those films that shaped me into who I am today. As an action film, you might not be surprised to hear that it's very entertaining. Obviously, the stunt work and the fight choreography and the CGI are stuff that we had never seen before in a movie, but also the cinematography had to be on par with that. The camera work in this movie is something that you don't hear many people talk about in reviews, and it has to be mentioned that this is probably one of the most gorgeously shot sci-fi films ever made. Maybe the best. Overall, it's safe to say that The Matrix is one of the best movies ever made. As a sci-fi film, as an action film, as a movie in general, few movies hold up against it. But from a nostalgia point of view, I don't know what my life would be like if I had never seen this film. It's a movie about fighting to protect your individuality and just being yourself relentlessly no matter what anybody says. And that's something that everybody can relate to no matter what your background is like. So as much as it pains me to admit, the other films in the franchise haven't been as horrendous as many people might say, but they also don't have as much to say. And I think for that reason, a lot of people were disappointed by them. The Matrix Reloaded was a sequel that was very highly anticipated. Obviously, the first one was a smash hit. Everybody loved it. Critics, audiences, the box office was just raking it in at that point. And it was up to this sequel to not only live up to the hype of the first one, but also to continue the story in an organic and necessary way and also expand the lore. I think this is why a lot of people originally hated this movie. Over the years, though, people seem to have warmed up and appreciated the film a little bit more. Rightfully so, because there's still a lot of stuff to enjoy about it. First off, everyone turns in a great performance all around. I feel like Hugo Weaving did a better job this time as Agent Smith than he did in the original, especially considering the hundreds of CGI doubles of himself. But between that and his performance, I think I was actually a lot more scared of him this time. And this movie obviously has a lot of really fun action scenes. There's the famous fight scene in the apartment courtyard, the scene where Neo fights all those bodyguards in that mansion foyer. The highway scene is still pretty fun. There are, however, a lot of choices in this movie that I was not a fan of. For the first 45 minutes or so, all we're doing is just catching up to where the characters are and what they're up to. We introduce the city of Zion, which is fascinating, but at the same time, it's mostly just exposition and slower character moments. And in terms of the story, there's not a lot happening for that first part of the film. Also, I do feel like this movie relies a little too much on the CGI doubles. A lot of people have complained that overuse of CGI and over-reliance on it for the sake of the story is bad, especially if you're dealing with an older movie. And I disagree, but I also agree to a point. I think good CGI isn't so much about the quality or the quantity, but specifically what the CGI is used for. Good movies in the past have used CGI a lot, and some of them still look really good today. A few examples I can name off the top of my head are Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Spider-Man, even The Matrix Revolutions look better than this one. When you're dealing with actors' likenesses, though, the use of CGI can get really tricky. That's why a movie like Peter Jackson's King Kong, for example, while it does use CGI doubles, it does its best not to get the camera too close to the character's face during the shots that it's used in. And for that reason, that movie still looks really good today, despite being over 15 years old. Unlike The Matrix Reloaded, in which you get extremely close to Neo's face during a lot of CGI shots, and it doesn't look as good. With that being said, once the story finally takes off, I was still really invested in the movie. I did enjoy most of the action scenes. A lot of people's favorite twist in this movie is the twist with the architect, where we find out that this is actually the sixth version of The Matrix. It adds a lot of really good lore to the franchise, and it opens the door for more sequels down the road, which I think is the reason why we're getting The Matrix Resurrections in the first place. The Matrix Revolutions was the epic conclusion of the trilogy. It had a lot of stuff that we loved from the first two Matrix films, as well as some stuff from Reloaded that I felt could have been improved upon. This movie has been called a 2-hour action scene, and for a lot of reasons that's true. The final fight between Neo and Smith is some ridiculous, over-the-top Superman vs. General Zod and Man of Steel bullshit. I just feel like it goes on for way too long, and it's full of some pretty obnoxious CGI shots, which, while they do look better than Reloaded in terms of the quality of them, I just feel like at a lot of points it's so over the top that they're just going for comedy. The action scene I was actually more invested in was the Battle of Zion. It had different characters doing different things in different locations throughout the city and throughout the world, and the action and the CGI was handled very well. It was surprisingly very grounded, despite all the over-the-top and, epic stuff going on all over the place. With that said, there were still some parts of Neo's part of the story that I still found really interesting. In The Matrix Reloaded, it's established that one of the Agent Smiths consumes another person and then gets uploaded back into that person's body. And there's tension now because now Agent Smith is finding a way into the real world and nobody knows he's there. And The Matrix Revolutions has a pretty intense fight scene halfway through the film between Neo and that agent, which honestly was really scary. I was actually really invested in it. Also, Neo's confrontation with the Source was pretty interesting too. My only gripe with it is that it was way too brief. We didn't get to explore anything else about the Source. We didn't get to see what that thing was up to, how it sort of managed the world that the Matrix takes place in. All basically it was there for was to just jack Neo into the Matrix. But at the end of the film, despite all that, I feel like it strangely gives us a lot of closure. And maybe it's just me looking at it through rose-colored glasses, but there is a sense that the story is finished in this sort of oddly satisfying way. But it's not so closed off as a trilogy that there can't be another story. In fact, at the end of the film, the Oracle says that she expects Neo to return in the future. Which is why I'm excited for The Matrix Resurrections. A lot of interesting stuff has been set up so far. From what I understand, this is a different version of Morpheus we're seeing, which is why he's being played by a different actor. Neo is also supposed to be a little older this time. We also have a different version of the agents, including Agent Smith. I'm really looking forward to seeing the whole story and just seeing what this adds to the Matrix franchise. So it's time for ratings. Obviously, the original Matrix gets a 10 out of 10, that should come as no surprise. As for The Matrix Reloaded, it's not as bad as many people might say. I have gotten to appreciate it over time, but there are still flaws in it that are very apparent. So for that reason, my rating for The Matrix Reloaded is 7 out of 10. As for The Matrix Revolutions, we do have a very mixed bag here. I feel like the final fight between Neo and Smith could have been handled better, but there are other action scenes that are handled extremely well. There are some interesting concepts throughout the film, and it does strangely offer a lot of really good closure, and it closes out the Matrix trilogy in a great way. So for that reason, my rating for The Matrix Revolutions is 6 out of 10. And there you have it, guys. That concludes my Matrix Trilogy video, but now I'd like to know your thoughts. What do you guys think about the Matrix Trilogy? Do you like the story overall? What are your thoughts on the last two films? And are you excited for the Matrix Resurrections? As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and please support our Patreon, we really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Diego for Cinemageddon Reviews, and I'll see you on the Wasteland.